Hello and welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Framework Podcast. I'm one of your two co-hosts for today, and we've got two individuals here that are both near and dear to Anna and myself. So Patrick and Dennis, both from the FPA here, the president and CEO. So excited to have both Dennis and Patrick joining us here today. It's good to see you both.
You too. Thank you for having us.
Good to see you.
Yeah. And I'll do my best to go back and forth between the two of you. It's always interesting when we're doing these remote ones and we've got four of us on here. But Anna has spent a long time at the FPA as an editor over there, and as we'd love the partnership between all of us, and I think we'll get into that here today. But just to kick off, we always start with a little bit about food, and I know Dennis was hearing my rant earlier before he hopped on, but for Patrick and Dennis, and we'll go Dennis, you first. You've had a little bit more time to think about it maybe, but what's your favorite city or type of food, or just what comes to mind about food? I'd love to hear that from both of you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for me, food, I'm actually pretty simple. I'm a steak and potatoes kind of guy. I'm from Texas. I love barbecue. But what I would say when you say location and food, so my wife and I went to Key West several years ago and had some of the best key lime pie that I've ever had. And so I'm on a mission always to find really good key lime pie with just the right amount of tartness and the right crunch and the graham cracker crust. So yeah, so I would say key lime pie is what I'm on the hunt for right now.
Was that made with spoiled milk?
I'm sorry?
Is key lime pie made with spoiled milk?
I don't know. I don't. I've actually never made it. I don't know that.
I don't make it. I just consume it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know that. That ingredient seems a little off, but if it is, it tastes really good. So I don't know.
Well, so do you remember the show Dexter? Yeah,
I've never seen that
the
one.
show Dexter had. So in Dexter, he really likes. There's an episode where he's like going around finding key lime pie, and supposedly, and I've never actually Googled it to look up, but the idea was that they started making it in the Keys because all the milk would spoil, and that's why they put in all the lime juice and stuff, was to cover up the spoiled milk taste, which I don't think places do it anymore, but I guess that was like at least the legend in the show.
Interesting. I had not heard that. I've just enjoyed eating it. I've never really looked at, other than the key limes, I've not looked into too much of the ingredients, but I might have to after this to see what's in there.
Key lime pie is so delicious. We went to the Keys last summer, and my husband tasted it for the first time, and now he's addicted, so he can relate to that.
Really, really good.
So what about you, Patrick? Now that you're in Denver, are you finding really good spots here in Denver? You kind of miss your food back home in the East Coast?
I'm always on the hunt for the best tiramisu. I made the mistake once of my wife made it for me. We had it from a cousin of hers, and she tried to make it, and you make this mistake once in a while in your marriage where you are honest about how you really feel about something. And I probably should have said something along the fact that this is great, but I said, it's okay. And she's never let me forgotten. So now everywhere, she's refused to make it since. And now everywhere we go where it's on the menu, we try it. And I always say it's not quite as good as yours. And I try to get out of it that way. But
no days?
I think she's on to me, Anna. We'll see.
So have you found a good spot in Denver that you like to frequent that has become kind of your regular spot?
There's a little Italian restaurant down the street from us called La Stola. And I like it a lot. I've become very, I like fish quite a bit. And they make some really good fish dishes that we like. And so we like that. It's quiet. I don't like, I used to be, when I was younger, I used to really like chain restaurants like Lone Star. Sorry, Dennis. But now I like these smaller places that don't have as many crowds. And it's more freshly made back in the kitchen. So there's a cute little Italian place that not a whole lot of people knows. But after it's on broadcast on your venue, Lord knows, I might have to find a different place to go to. But so far, so good.
Well, another question we always like to ask is about your first money memory. And I think, from both of you, this will be really interesting because a lot of the, FPA members, right, they ask this question with their clients all the time. But we'll go backwards this time. And Patrick, how about you? Do you have a first money memory that sticks out to you?
I do. Now I'm going to date myself, but when I was 14 or 13 or 14, I had generated my first stream of income by delivering the morning newspaper around town. So I would get up at 4 in the morning. My father would follow me in a station wagon. I had 200 newspapers in the back of the car, and I would roll them up from 4 to 4:30 and bag them if it was raining. And then he would follow me around because I couldn't carry all of them on my bike. And I generated about maybe at the time about $50 a month, which back then for a 13-year-old was a good bit of money. And then I supplemented that income by all the people that wanted to get rid of the newspapers. So back then you could collect newspapers, take them to a depot where they would weigh your car with and without the newspapers, and then you'd make money on that. So I think by the time I was 13, I was doing maybe 150 a week, maybe. But at the time, that was a lot of money for me. And one weekend, I was at a sleepover at my grandparents' house, and my grandfather sat me down, and he said, "Look, you're making good money now." And of course, I'm thinking, "Yeah, I am. I'm, at the ripe old age of 13." He said, "This is what I want to do for you. I want to take you down to the bank and open up a passbook savings account." And it was with the York Federal Savings and Loan, and it was a black and white little thing by 5 inches by 4 inches you kept in your pocket. And he said, "For every dollar that you deposit, I'll match it. But the deal is you can't take it out till you go to college." And you are going to college. That was not up for debate. But I wasn't allowed to spend it if I deposited it. And I thought, well, why not? Well, do you know that by the time I graduated at the age of 18 from high school, I had about almost $4,000. And I put in 2 and he had matched 2, but he would match it over time. But he kept the passbook so he would know if I took it to take money out. That was the thing. But I always remember that. It taught me the value of compounding interest. I mean, he and my grandmother used that as a lesson. And so by the time I was 18, I understood compounding interest. I understood the value of savings. And I was lucky to attend college on a scholarship. I was very fortunate. But I was able to use that money for other things that the scholarship didn't cover, like books and laundry and things like that. And I tried to do that same with my children. But of course, fast forward 30 years and things are just a whole lot more expensive. And it was a very valuable experience to me, and it stayed with me all these years since.
It's a really critical lesson to learn before you're 18 or before you go to college, because a lot of people don't learn that and then go off to college and then just get in trouble because they don't understand the concept of compounding interest. So that's good on your parents for doing that for you, Patrick. But wasn't there a case where your dad had you sign a contract for something to get an allowance? You had to do certain chores.
Wow.
And I remember that story from...
You have a good memory. I wanted an allowance. And every kid on the block had an allowance, but my father did not believe in them. And I begged and begged. You know how kids can be irritable. And he finally sat me down at the kitchen table, and he offered me a contract. And it was $1 a week, but there was a contract with it, and the contract stipulated that 50 cents had to go into my passbook savings account. 10 cents had to go into the bucket of church on Sunday, and that left me with 40 cents a week, Anna. 40 cents, 4 dimes, that I could spend on myself or anything that I would do. But in exchange for that, I had to make my bed every morning. I had no back talk to my mother. I had to clean up after the dog. Well, I did all that, and I got my 4 dimes every Saturday morning. And then about 15, maybe 20 years later, on the night before I got married, my father gave me a letter. And in the letter was a copy of the contract that I had long since forgotten about. And with a note, "Dear son, just so you know, these chores never change." And that was about it. So that was my lesson.
I love that. I love that story. It's a great one. What about you, Dennis? What was your first money memory?
Yeah, my dad still has a trucking and road construction business, and so I remember as a really little kid, I'd go to work with him, especially in the summertime and all of that, and I'd go to work, right? I'm not sure I was a lot of help, but I was with my dad helping him do all of that, and so he had me fill out a timesheet at the end of each week, and I think it started out like I got $1 a week type of deal, which I thought was man, that was good stuff. But yeah, which then kind of grew, and I would work with him every summer just throughout as I got older, and then was actually a little more helpful and productive. But it was kind of the same thing like Patrick mentioned. I mean, he took me down to the bank. I was saving it in my little piggy bank, as a kid, but then he took me down to the bank and had me talk with the banker and what was I trying to do and all of that, and opened up a savings account and then a checking, and he taught me how to write out checks and how to keep your checkbook balanced and all of that. So yeah, a lot of similarities there with what Patrick said. But I think for me, specifically on filling out that timesheet and going to work and just seeing what my dad was doing and all of that, really instilled uh, work ethic and just kind of what it means to work and to earn money and to save money and just what all that means. So
I think both of the stories talk to like the seriousness of money too, right? Like that both of your parents
Yeah,
took it very serious in conveying it. And I think that's a beautiful thing versus, for some people you don't get that, you don't get that lesson too much later. And sometimes it's in a negative way as opposed to a positive. So those are beautiful. We've got two main topics we want to hit on here today, and so one of them was just announced recently, which was kind of the Financial Planning Association, right? Which I guess we're all, so I'll say we, right? We are part of the that leading organization out there for CFP professionals, and one of the steps that you guys talked about taking is legal recognition of a term, right? So I'd love to, right? And it's a very important term, and it's in the name. But tell us a little bit about that and where we're going, and then I just want to hear later about the new way of thinking that's come into the FPA also, and some of the other initiatives that are going on. But let's start with this legal recognition of financial planners and this path forward.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're excited about that. As our primary advocacy goal of the legal recognition of the title financial planner. So we believe that financial planning is a noble profession, it's a worthy profession, and as such deserves recognition, deserves that legal protection, and really what we're looking at is again legal protection of the title financial planner and what that means. So what are the qualifications and the minimum competency and ethical standards in order for someone to call themselves a financial planner? Because right now there's that's not in place. There's some credentialing bodies that have some of those aspects in place, but overall as a policy and policymakers, there's no set standard for someone calling themselves a financial planner. So the FPA board felt that it was important for us to take this initiative and move forward. It's been talked about in the industry and the profession for many years, and we felt it was time for us to move on it. Although we know it's going to be a long-term goal, it's not a quick goal. It's going to take multiple years to do, and we're aiming to be very inclusive on it. We want to hear from stakeholders in the profession and everything, and kind of really get what the strategies look like from those discussions.
So tell us a little bit about why our industry, or why we haven't been able to get title protection the same way other professions have been able to do that. What are some of those barriers that have kept us from that?
It's a complicated path, Anna. It requires patience, and that's not something that this industry is noted for.
Mm-hmm.
We you can come out with a very detailed plan, and instead of focusing on the execution of the plan, there's a lot of second guessing about the details of that plan.
Mm-hmm.
And what we needed to do, and I think what might be a little bit different now versus in the past, is that we've been tracking the mood and the sentiment among our members. We did a survey back in May, and 78% of those that responded said that protection of the title was very important to them. You couple that with anecdotal things that you pick up at conferences, that you pick up in chat rooms, that you pick up in one-on-one meetings in the financial planning community. And a lot of it goes along the lines of, I keep up to date on all my competencies. I keep the date. I conduct myself in an ethical fashion. Integrity is the core of my business. I deliver 360-degree, full-body, holistic plans to my clients. This is a profession to which I was called. I believe in it. It's very important to me. I know that my clients value me. But that fellow down the street that does 10% of what I do, he calls himself a financial planner. What are you doing, Patrick? What is FPA doing to protect my ability to make a living as a planner? You're my membership organization. What are you doing? And I think that's what changed. That people were saying, hey, we belong to you. What are you doing to help me? Mm-hmm. To protect my business, to build my business, to grow my business. And I think that was the Rubicon that our board of directors crossed when they began to take all this in, because they all have been hearing things similar themselves. Dennis can cite chapter and verse in his career, but he's heard this before. But I think in the past, there was a reluctance to get involved in it because of the headwinds that we would face, the difficult path that we were going to be ahead. But sometimes when you're making a big decision for an organization or a business or a profession, you got to put that aside and say to yourself, is this the right thing to do? And in our case, we knew it was the right thing to do for our members, and we knew it was the right thing to do for the profession because it benefits consumers and it benefits the planners. And that kind of argument had not been articulated before. So in the 2 months since we've made the announcement, it's hard to believe. Actually, it's been 6 weeks since we made the announcement. It's been very gratifying, the reactions that we've received. And as Dennis and others are fond of saying, this is going to be a long game. We made 2 announcements at the same time. One, we said that this was going to be a long-term strategic objective of the organization. In the same breath, we said that we were going to be building those standards, those threshold elements of competency and ethics on an inclusive basis with anyone that was willing to work with us, provided that they had the same interest that we do, which was to build a profession. So FPA is not going to do this in a vacuum. But in doing that, it takes a while to get that done, as you can imagine. And so we're just not walking out with the prescription and saying, this is what's going to be, and that's it. We're going to be very inclusive about it, which takes some time. But the impetus behind it was that I think we've danced around it long enough. We've talked about it long enough. This is not the first time, I'm sure, Jamie, that you've heard about it. And Anna, certainly we've talked about it at FPA meetings before, Anna. Mm-hmm. But we decided this time that FPA was going to be a leader and we were going to do something about it, which is what we've done.
Patrick and Dennis, I'll flip this over and give me 2 seconds because I'm going to do my own little soapbox on it. As you said, I've obviously talked about this before, and I think it's an incredibly important step forward. I've talked about this industry not becoming a profession yet, and I know we use those terms back and forth, but until we have some of these lines drawn out there, it's hard for us to move away from industry to profession, and it confuses the public. And I think that, Dennis, you said first, right, which is this is a long-term thing. One of the things that Carson, we talk about is being the most trusted in financial advice. And one of the parts about that, though, is sometimes people hear that and like, oh, so you're going to be it. And it's like, no one firm, no one person can be it without having a bunch of other people included. If everybody doesn't try to raise up some type of bar, we're not going to get there, because when you have the bad person down the street, and it might only be 1 out of 20 that really is causing harm, that reflects on the other 19, though. And it's been a challenge for this industry that there's still a negative perception and lack of trust in financial services. So to me, what this really goes to the core of is raising up that trust factor for consumers. So as you guys think about how important the trust level is there, could you talk me through a little bit of that? Because obviously that's probably came up in, I know when you guys have these meetings, right? Getting consumers to trust financial planners then, because they can see the title, they know what it means. How do you think you go about that? Because I think there's a lot of work to do there. So what's the, I guess, starting strategy as you look out there to raise that up?
Yeah, and you're right, and this is it's a young profession, and I know it's a profession yet, an emerging profession, whatever it may be. But we feel the legal recognition of the term financial planner, the title financial planner, is a big step in getting financial planning recognized as a distinct, essential profession, like some of the other professions that are out there. And part of that is, again, it's going to help the financial planners get the recognition that they deserve for doing financial planning, and in what those and what that means, the competencies and ethical standards there for that. But you're right, on the consumer side, they'll be able to know whenever they hear the word financial planner, they know what that means. We feel financial health is just as important as mental health and physical health. And so we want the consumer to be able to know that whenever they're engaging with a financial planner, that their comprehensive financial well-being, financial health is the focus of that relationship. And we feel this title protection of financial planner is the first step towards achieving that.
So Dennis,
Patrick, how do you
go ahead?
Go ahead, Anna.
No, Jamie, you go ahead.
So Patrick, how do you look at that trust factor as leading this organization and a lot of the members out there too? Because I think for when I talk to a lot of members, right, that trust factor with their clients is utmost important. How does this legal recognition help raise that? I know, Dennis, you just talked about a little, they know the standard that they're going to get, but I think a lot of people, when you ask them financial planning wise, what do they do? What work do we need to do, I guess, to get all financial planners on the same page, right? So we describe our process in a similar way, that we can articulate our values and ethics in a similar way. Because, if you go to an attorney, which, I'm a barred attorney, I can tell you what the American Bar Association's ethical standards are. I can tell you what my state ethical standards are. And we know that we all adhere to them. So to some degree, do we need to level set to help planners be able to do that articulation?
I think I'll answer that in two ways, Jamie, and I want to piggyback off what Dennis alluded to. A couple of months ago, Cerulli Associates issued a report that there's an 84 trillion with a T, transfer of wealth from one generation to the next that's going on currently. That's going to continue to go on for the next 5 or 6 years. And in the context of that, imagine if yourself household conversations across America, where you have one generation transferring wealth to another, parents to children, grandparents to children, whatnot. And either side of that kitchen table has to be represented by a planner for that generation. Now, the consumer has to have an interest, has to have a belief that planner's representing them, that they're in the arena for them, that they're representing their best interest for them. Just like you go to an attorney, you expect that they're going to give you advice that's in your best interest, not your attorney's, right? And for our financial planner, for the consumer, they need to know that the financial planner that they've engaged is meeting, threshold requirements in terms of competency, threshold requirements in terms of ethics, that they're giving them cogent, objective advice for them that benefits them. And that goes to either side of the table. And that's really important in this long-range discussion, that you're having this holistic solution to a problem or to a challenge that can be, for many families, can be difficult to have. On the flip side, the benefit to the planner, which is touching what you've asked me, is that they need to be recognized as a profession, not as an industry. So, as an attorney, you're recognized, Jamie, already as a profession. And it's in a profession that's over 1,000 years old. physicians, dentists, accountants, they're all recognized as profession. For some reason, though, financial planners don't have that same panache, that same polish as a profession that these other professions do. But it just has the same degree of nobility. It still has the same contribution to society. And nothing can be more intimate to you than what's in your pocketbook. And Dennis is quite right that a good financial planner, and you talk about that in your book, Rewirement. I don't want to give you guys a plug, but you talk about that the issue of financial wellness is just as important as the issue of physical wellness and mental wellness. And a good financial planner, like Dennis and others like him, are doing all three at the same time. That's what you're paying those fees for, to give good holistic advice and a life plan, not an episode plan. And so if you have a consumer that knows that the planner's in the arena for them, and if you have a planner who believes that she's part of a noble profession, akin to dentists and physicians and attorneys and accountants, this lifts the dialogue of the importance of financial planning in this country. And it conveys the importance of financial wellness across American families. And in the middle of all that, right in the middle of all that, balancing all that, is the financial planner. And that's who we're fighting for.
So one of the things that I feel anecdotally is that a lot of consumers in my community have no idea what financial planners are. And so I've done my due diligence in trying to educate people. And I'm always recommending, when my sister, my siblings, or my cousins, or anybody asks me, like, where do I look or how do I look, right? I always recommend that they go to Planner Search, first of all. And second of all, that they look for a CFP professional. And I have to tell them this narrative that we're talking about right now. Like they have to adhere to ethical standards. They have to, have certain amounts of CE credits. They have to continually educate themselves and be up to date. And they have all of these requirements that they have to meet. So I don't know. I guess my question is, do you feel that there's a gap in the knowledge among consumers, and how does that play into this initiative? Will FPA be part of that in educating consumers, or is that going to be a partnership with somebody else? Because I think that's a very important element to this. I mean, legal recognition, of course, is separate. However, that is part of the issue as to why we can't get there. So do you think that that's something that you're going to address?
I do. It starts with the recognition of the legal protection of the phrase, because that's how you build the profession, by protecting the title. But that's not the end game. The end game is, once the title is protected and the profession is established. We all know we're a part of the profession today. We believe we're part of a profession. But outside this podcast, I don't know that the rest of the country necessarily believes that. Yet they're looking for a solution, right? They're looking for that reassurance. It's reassurance that we can give. But then you get into, well, how do we get that message across to the rest of the country, to those, to your point, Anna, those that don't have a planner, could use a planner, need a planner, desire to have a planner. That's all education, and that's all communication of the message of this profession to which we all belong, and we hope that those who come after us aspire to. But that's part of it. But I think for us, the problem maybe that this has not worked before is that we've tried to do too many things at the same time. And this is one of those things where you have to do things in an iterative fashion. And the first thing is, we got to nail down the protection of the title, and then that will very quickly leverage into enhancement of the profession. And then from there, the more people that are talking about it, the more the communication that you can get out.
Yeah. So building blocks. That's great. So Dennis, talk to us as a financial planner. What does this mean personally to you to have title protection? What does it mean to you as a financial planner?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of what kind of what Patrick just described as well. But I mean, it's just knowing that recognition is there. Like as Patrick, for us on this call and others in it, we know what a financial planner is and all that. But you're right, the consumer doesn't always know that because again, there's no protection around who can call themselves a financial planner, and so the services offered are different, all across the board. And so by being able to really kind of define that and just get that recognition, not only for financial planner, but then leading into financial planning, is really important to me. Like, I've been in this profession since college. And so it's just, just for me, it's personally important, it's professionally important. And I just think it's a crucial step that we're taking. And I'll mention too, I think I mentioned it earlier, but, and I know Patrick said it too, but it's not going to just be FPA in a vacuum coming up with what these standards are and all of that. We've just said, this is our main advocacy goal. We're going to work towards it, but we're going to be very inclusive. We want to hear from the stakeholders in this emerging profession. We want to hear from them. And, we're going into this without any preconceived notions of what it's going to look like. We know where we want to get to, but what is the strategy and the how and all that, that's going to be a very inclusive conversation. And again, that's why it's going to take time for us to do. And that's something that, I'm very proud of the board and FPA for really kind of dedicating and knowing that this is a long-term initiative. It's not something that's going to get solved in the next 6 months. This is a multi-year initiative that we're committed to seeing through, which I'm very excited
about. It is extremely exciting.
Yeah, definitely. But so you said that you've been in the profession since college, and I'm always curious about folks who jumped in right from college. Like, how did you learn about financial planning? What made you want to go into it?
Yeah, so I graduated with a degree in personal financial planning from Texas Tech. So my degree is actually in personal financial planning. That being said, going into college, I did not know what financial planning was. I didn't know it existed, and so it was just one of those that I learned about it. And then once I talked to the program director at Texas Tech and learned what financial planning, what it was, being able to have such an impact on people, on families, on society, it just struck me. And I knew this is the profession I wanted to be involved in and to spend my career with. And that's really how I got into that degree program at Texas Tech. That's how I learned about FPA. So I actually joined FPA as a student at Texas Tech and was involved in our student group and a variety of other things over the years. That's really gotten me to today. But yeah, it's just been part of my career journey. So this is very exciting for me to see where we're at.
So I love that we're shifting from interviewing people who fall into the profession, like, oh, I never knew about it. And then I got into it like this accidental way, to interviewing people like you are like, yes, I majored in this. This is what I wanted to do. So I love that. That's going to continually shift, I hope in the future.
Yeah. Yep.
And Texas Tech's, done about as well as anybody out there, right? In getting new people into this profession. And, it's had fantastic professors and teachers, instructors, and now graduates too. And then, they've done a wonderful job there. And, Dr. Craig Lemoyne and Dr. Preston Cherry too, that we often work with here, both cuts their teeth there for a while too. And, I used to work for Dr. Michael Finca too, and at the American College with him. So I've had a lot of really good Texas Tech experiences.
A lot of Red Raider connections there. Yeah, absolutely.
Dennis does not need any encouragement talking about Texas Tech.
I'm like, yeah, we got another hour or so to go on this podcast. We can talk some Texas Tech. So no, but no, they're doing a great job in a lot of programs too, and that's what I love seeing. There's so many more financial planning programs popping up around the country and doing really good work in getting not only the word out that this is a viable profession and a career to get into, but then, like you said, graduating them and getting them into the profession. Some of them getting their PhDs to then start other programs. And so again, it's just it's really starting to build on itself, which is exciting to see.
I think that's a good segue then too, since we're talking about inclusion and building this up, that Patrick and Dennis, I know both with your leadership there, at least it appears very much so, that the FPA started to include other things to members. Also, I saw the behavioral finance pieces you just brought in. You announced the Carson coaching relationship earlier this year. Just tell us a little bit about that strategy and how you're bringing more value to members, it looks like, by partnering with other really great resources for them.
It came really from the desire to be as supportive of the chapters as we can. So we're a very chapter-centric organization. We have 78 chapters across the country. And, how better to improve the member experience within the chapter, but by creating opportunities that support the chapters. And that's what we decided to do. And we have a lot of smaller chapters that don't have deeper pockets and they can't afford speaking fees that keep up with the larger chapters. So we cut a couple of deals that offer discounts across the spectrum so that everybody gets a fair shake at getting qualified speakers to speak at their events, and that helps the chapters. Then we focused on things like Carson coaching, because most of our, I would say maybe 50% of our members belong to smaller RIAs. Now, those RIAs are under a bit of a evolution as we speak because of all the M&A activity over the past 12, 18 months. But nevertheless, they, whether you get scooped up by somebody like LPL or whatnot, you still maintain that founder mindset, that entrepreneurial mindset that helped you build your business to begin with. And anybody that's worth their salt is going to recognize that the benefit of having good coaching, either to help you think through a thorny issue or think around a thorny issue, to think about succession, to think about investing in your employees, to position yourself for new markets. And you can't do that in a vacuum, particularly if you're a small shop that doesn't have the deeper resources of the larger firms. And so this was seen as a win-win for all of our members, that they could avail themselves of coaching opportunities, particularly coaching opportunities that are highly attenuated to the industry that we serve, which is what Carson Coaching did. So we saw that as an opportunity to support not only our chapters, but also our members. And that's been the benefit of it. And I think it's a wonderful thing. But it came from the desire to support our chapters and to help them grow. The more you do to help your brothers and sisters in the field, the more successful the organization is going to be, not the other way around. And that's the attitude that we took starting about 2 years ago.
And Patrick, you have a lot of other
it's almost
really
a little like.
No, I was saying you have a lot of other really great programs going on too, and a special shout out to the FPA staff who, having been a former FPA staff member, I know they work incredibly hard, and especially Christine Richardson, who has just been like, fighting for the members all of these years and doing everything she can to support and bring on new programs. And I know you have a lot of really interesting initiatives like certificate programs, badge programs, things like that. Tell us a little bit about those and how, those benefit your members and your chapters also.
We did something that, with the Latino Leadership Institute, as an example, which gave folks when you think about those kinds of offerings, it's partly to make yourself more attenuated to the details of that specific demographic. But also, when you think about it, if you're looking to grow your business, you want to know how to appeal to those spectrums in order to expand your business. And a lot of folks don't think about it that way, but then when they do, the light bulb goes on, and all of a sudden they've been looking this way at a market, and all of a sudden they're looking this way at a market. So it was things like that. We came up with a lot of certificates. Cybersecurity is a big one. Being sensitive and diversity is another. But this is everything. It's, as I like to think about it, it's giving our members additional tools in their toolbox to run their business, to expand their business, and to make their business sustainable and grow. And that really, it's why we all get out of bed in the morning and feet hit the floor, and we're thinking about how to serve our members. And that's where many of those things came from.
The helping members grow is huge too. I mean, every time that they can grow, it gives us the opportunity to bring new people into the profession. And that's one thing that I keep thinking about is, and Patrick, you used the word noble. And I think the first person I remember using that to me as part of our profession was Dr. Julie Raggets. Her father was, in the financial advice business and always used the term. And I love that term, right? That this is a noble profession to be part of, because we really do change people's lives, right? That financial freedom, that a good financial planner can instill in a family. And you mentioned multi-generational as we transfer wealth, right? Like it fundamentally can change communities and lives. So when we can help people grow and impact more people, it gives us the ability to bring more people in and then impact more. And it really does become that exponential and almost compounding interest if we think about it investing back into this profession. So it's a fun way if you ever, whenever you're ever thinking like, hey, is all the work that you're putting in worth it? Well, it's exponential, right? Because every time you add one more client, impact one more family, it grows to more and more.
I couldn't agree more.
So you guys also have the so this will be out before the national conference. So you've got the national conference coming up in December this year, and tell me a little bit about your excitement around that. I know for some people it's probably the first time they're going to be back around their fellow members together in a while. But what are you looking forward to most about the conference?
Yeah, for me, it's just that it's being back in person, being able to connect. It's been great again, just like with everybody over the last couple of years, been able to stay connected via Zoom or whatever it may be. But there's just something about being in person and connecting in person, and that is what I'm looking forward to the most. I know it's going to be a great conference, great speakers, great great lineup there. But just being able to see everybody, see some people that I haven't seen in 2 or 3 years, and really kind of rekindle those connections. It's just really important to me.
Yeah, and I think I'll give you a little bit of a heads up. By the time this is aired, I think we will probably have made the announcement. But one of our keynote speakers is going to be Sally Krawcheck. They came out of Bank of America. That's not normally the type of speaker that FPA has pursued in the past, but we wanted to have a big name out there, a recognized leader in the industry, particularly that represents a diverse view. So it's that kind of investment that we're making to help our members. And we've suffered, the financial planning profession has suffered the past 2 years with the absence of being able to convene. It's just in our DNA, the ability to network. And, Zoom meetings are great, but they don't fill the bill when you want to, shake the flesh and look at somebody in the eye and read body language and just have a talk. I mean, go for a walk and talk. And that's hard to do. And some of these issues that you all at Carson contend with on behalf of your clients, that we contend with on behalf of our members, they're not all neat and tidy and can be resolved in 5 minutes. Sometimes you have to talk things out and think and benefit from those that came before you that dealt with something similar, or this is how they would have handled it. And in retrospect, this is how I should have handled it. Learn from me. Those kinds of things just take time, and they're better facilitated in an in-person environment. And unfortunately, since the first quarter of 2020, there's just been an absence about that. Now, luckily, the nation's crawling out of it, but only at half speed. And I'm looking forward to next year for a full return of all of our conferences, and the public has confidence in their ability to travel and interact and not get sick and not worry about that so much. It feels like we're getting back to normal. But the industry has suffered from the lack of ability to convene. It kind of teaches us all, doesn't it, how important this in-person aspect of networking was important. Jamie, you and I have known each other for 1.5 years, and the first time I met you was in April. Mm-hmm. When you think about that,
yeah, I remember.
It's not normal. You ought to be able to convene and meet and talk about, particularly in the conference circuit, and that's been disrupted. So getting the big thing, I agree with Dennis, is just getting back into the swing of meeting people and breaking bread and talking. I think that's just half the battle. So I'm personally looking forward to it.
Yeah, Anna and I were both at it.
Yeah, we were both out at Retreat, which is always my favorite. Yeah, I love Retreat. And Dennis, you were there emceeing with your nice cowboy hat. And I have a question off topic.
Okay.
I see Patrick's nice collection of hats back there. Patrick, did Dennis influence you to buy all those hats?
Lord have mercy. You have no idea.
You moved out west and became a cowboy, Patrick.
The worst part about it, the worst part about it was, I was guided, to get cowboy boots and then to get a hat. And I'm all in. But the first time I wore my hat for him, I got this look, and of course I wasn't wearing my hat the right way. So as he said, we have to work on that. But so we're little by little. But it's the funny thing about it is, here in Denver, people don't wear cowboy hats.
No.
In Denver proper, you get out into the open country near the mountain, all of a sudden you start to notice it quite a bit. But of course, I was born with fair skin of an Irishman, so I got to be careful in the sun. So I've come to be using those hats more and more often. But yes, Dennis was a primary agent getting me to invest in cowboy. I got myself a cowboy belt buckle. I got myself a rodeo shirt. I went to one of these things. What do you call it in April? They have it here in Denver in April. It's like this big event for the rodeo.
The stock show?
I saw things I've never seen in my life. Bourbon drinking, axe throwing, cat wearing, all happening at the same time. I mean, it was unbelievable. I saw bulls being sold for like 1.7 million. I mean, it was nuts. It all at the same time. It was a world of which I had never been exposed before. And but this is the West, and out here, and this is very much part of the Western culture. And particularly when so much of the economy is financial based. And I have come to appreciate how much the rest of the nation depends on this part of the country, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, Montana, for livestock and whatnot. It's just a world I had not been exposed to before, but I am now.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. And as we start to wind down, I tell our listeners, who a lot of them are advisors and planners, how they can get involved in FPA and give them some guidance there.
Yeah, so lots of ways to get involved. And as I mentioned, I found it early in my career, and I've just continued to stay involved and give back, and it's just meant so much to me. And so I would encourage you to find your local chapter. Wherever that may be, get plugged in there, attend some chapter meetings, join a committee, join the board. So there's opportunities at the chapter level, there's opportunities at the national level with different communities, knowledge circles online, so many different ways of plugging into FPA, but it's plugging into FPA, but it's plugging into your profession. And I think that is crucially important for us to do in order for us to continue to build this and get it to where we want it to be.
I agree. And the neat thing about this profession, it's a helping profession. And I've yet to meet a financial planner that isn't willing to help other planners, especially those in their local community, because you can't cover everything. And there's something very American, very entrepreneurial about starting your own business. And when you hang out your shingle, you're looking for guidance and ideas. You want to run it yourself, but you're open to other ideas. And so joining a local community of other financial planners who aren't necessarily there to tell you how to do it, but to give you advice about how they did it. Mm-hmm. You can figure it out, what's best for you and your practice. That's the biggest thing, because it helps you get up and going. And then if you look at it from a macro level, it just shows how this can be such a wonderful appeal as a vocation to high school kids. You don't necessarily, when you take that famous career counseling quiz and they grade you on when you get this spit back of what you ought to be, funeral director, florist, doctor, accountant, who knows what they tell you. But financial planner, when I was in high school, was not one of those potential occupations. It should be, for reasons I've already talked about earlier in the program. That how big a stake financial planning is going to be for every American household, regardless of its origin, regardless of its race, color, creed, or gender. It's very, very important. And what a wonderful time to think about the value of becoming a financial planner And what a wonderful time to start your own financial planning practice. So that's the benefit of membership, is to help you to be able to understand that and to assimilate as quickly as you can. And then when you think about how to keep up on all the competencies that you need to be a competent planner and to market yourself as a reliable and competent planner, that's what your local FPA chapter can do. And that's what FPA National endeavors to support our chapters in doing.
Wonderful. So tell our listeners where they can find you or the best place to connect with you.
The best place to connect with us is on our website, www.financialplanningassociation.org. And there you'll see we've divided the website into 4 components. We leverage the word plan, PLAN. So P for practice support, N for learning, A for advocacy, and N for networking.
Oh,
and you can
cool.
begin very rapidly to see. It sounds simple, but honestly, I mean, when you think about it. And so we kind of broke it down that way to make it easier to digest. And then you can see where you fit and where you can help. We have a very vibrant next-gen community, which is, for the most part, those under the age of 40 or have been in practice less than 8 years, and they want to network with other folks that they work with. And so we appeal to everybody, and we welcome everybody. And the good news is that membership is growing, and little by little, which is a positive thing. But the message is getting out that the Financial Planning Association, for you that are financial planners, is your professional home. Mm. And it's where you can invest in yourself and invest in others to help you grow your own practice, but also be part of something bigger than yourself. And that's to help grow the profession.
Dennis and Patrick and Anna, this is a fantastic conversation. I want to thank Dennis and Patrick for your leadership and, for helping all the members out there and help grow this profession. And yeah, if you haven't registered for the, FPA conference, make sure if you're listening and you're a member, get out there, register. If you haven't set up your coaching account on there, do that too. It's fantastic. I think we broke 500 members this last week with their account set up. So that's exciting. And, yeah, that's good. So moving forward. But Dennis and Patrick, as always, thank you, for everything that you're doing out there. Anna, thanks for, leading this conversation here today. And everybody else, thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Framework Podcast.